Everyone talks about positive confession, but almost nobody understands what Romans.17 is actually showing us about how God talks to reality. It isn't a cute theology phrase for Bible school debates. It's a window into how the God you serve interacts with the unseen, and how your words, when aligned with Him, can pull provision, health, and opportunity out of the invisible and into your timeline. If that kind of quantum Bible wealth, quantum faith, and real-world manifestation from Scripture resonates with you, go ahead and like this video right now, subscribe, and share it with someone who's stuck in lack but knows they're called to more. Romans.17 says that God calls into being things that were not, or calls those things which are not as though they were. That verse is not mainly about Abraham's personality, it's about God's methodology. Abraham simply agreed with it. God looks at a barren couple and calls them father of many nations. God looks at a dead womb and speaks about descendants. God looks at a cross and calls it victory before the resurrection happens. The pattern is clear. God speaks from the finished reality, not the current appearance. Your life sits between what you see in your bank app and what God sees in your destiny. Between those two, there is a gap, an invisible zone of potential. Quantum physics calls it superposition and probability. Faith calls it promise. The question is, which one do your words agree with? Let's make this simple. When you only say what you see, you're just narrating the old reality. When you learn to say what God says, even when you haven't seen it yet, you're starting to cooperate with His way of calling things that are not as though they were. That is the heart of Romans.17. This is not pretend you don't have debt or deny your symptoms. This is about refusing to let your mouth become a parrot for fear and lack, and instead letting it become a speaker for heaven's perspective. Think of your words like a bridge between two worlds. On one side is the visible, your current income, your job, your debts, your tiredness. On the other side is the invisible, God's provision, ideas you haven't had yet, connections you haven't met, doors that haven't opened. When you speak from the old side, you reinforce it. When you speak from the God side, you start drawing that unseen into the seen. Quantum physics gives an interesting metaphor here. At the microscopic level, particles don't act like tiny billiard balls. They exist as waves of possibilities, and only when a measurement or interaction happens does one possibility become the reality you observe. It's called wave function collapse. Before, there are many potentials. After, there is one concrete outcome. That's a picture, not a doctrine, but it helps. Your life is full of potentials, futures where you stay stuck, and futures where you walk in biblical abundance, wisdom, and generosity. Your words, soaked in faith and obedience, function like the measurement. They are how you pick which possibility gets reinforced. Here where people get weird, they hear that and think, so I can just speak a Ferrari into my driveway. That's law of attraction without a cross, and it collapses under the weight of selfishness. Romans.17 isn't describing human ego. It's describing a God who gives life to the dead and calls realities into being. Your role is not to replace God. Your role is to echo Him. Christian quantum manifestation is I am the source. It's I'm tuning my mouth to the source. So how does this connect to money and quantum field money in a way that is still holy? Think about all the financial breakthrough scriptures you've ever read. Verses about God supplying your needs, giving you power to get wealth, blessing the work of your hands, opening the windows of heaven, bringing abundance when you seek first His kingdom. Those verses are not just comfort phrases. They are coordinates to a reality in God. When you choose to speak them like they're already true about you, you're doing what Abraham did, calling yourself what God calls you before you look like it. The problem is, most believers treat Romans.17 like a definition to memorize, not a blueprint to live. They'll say God calls those things that are not, but then talk all day about how nothing ever works out, how money never stays, how they're always broke. That's like staring at a quantum field of possibilities and repeatedly choosing the worst one with your mouth. You're reinforcing a version of you that heaven never wrote. Let's bring this into a real situation. Imagine it's the end of the month, the bills are stacked, and your income doesn't cover everything. One version of you says, I never have enough. This always happens, I'm cursed with money. Another version of you takes a breath, feels the same pressure, but says, right now I see lack, but my God supplies all my needs according to His riches. I'm blessed in my coming and going. I have wisdom for money. Opportunities are being prepared that I don't see yet. Same bills, same reality. completely different choice of which future you're feeding. One response calls the present problem final, the other calls a higher reality true and expects the present to eventually adjust. Calling things that are not as though they were isn't a game. It's work. It feels risky because your feelings lag behind your declarations, but that's what faith looks like. Now here's a key distinction. You are not commanded to lie about what exists. You're invited to call forth what doesn't exist yet. There's a difference between saying, "I don't have debt," while staring at a debt notice. That's denial, and saying, "I have debt in the natural, but I call in strategies, favor, and provision to eliminate this. I call myself a faithful steward who pays this off and walks free." You're honest about the current state, but your primary confession is about God's perspective and your future. Let's talk about your voice as a kind of spiritual frequency. Every word you speak carries an emotional charge and a belief pattern. Over time, your dominant tone creates a kind of resonance, what you are constantly broadcasting into your world about who you are, what life is, and what's possible. If your inner broadcast is struggle, 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 you filter out opportunities that don't match that. If your inner broadcast is, "I'm blessed to be a blessing," I attract assignments, not accidents. You notice and respond to open doors that previously you would have missed or sabotaged. Faith and quantum physics intersect in this idea of resonance. In physics, systems can sync up and start vibrating together if they share certain frequencies. In life, your beliefs sync you up with certain people, choices, and environments. When you start speaking from Romans.4:17, calling abundance, wisdom, and provision into being the way God does, you're slowly retuning yourself to a new frequency. So how do you actually do this without becoming weird, fake, or delusional? Here's a simple framework you can practice every day. Step 1. Expose yourself to the blueprint. Take time with Romans.4:17 and with other prosperity scriptures. Read them slowly until you see a picture, not just words. See God speaking to Abraham while Abraham still has no visible reason to believe. See God calling you a son, a daughter, a steward, blessed and empowered to create value. Let those phrases become more familiar to your inner ear than the sentences of fear you've been repeating for years. Step 2. Identify your current script. Pay attention for one full day to what you say about money, work, and your future. Do you say, "This will never work. I'm always behind. I'm bad with money. People like me never get ahead"? That's your current quantum wealth scripture, the verse you've been living from, even if it's not in the Bible. You can't change what you won't admit, so write those sentences down if you have to. They're not just random, they're decrees that have been shaping your field. Step 3. Replace, don't just remove. For every fear phrase you catch, build a Romans.4:17 style declaration rooted in actual scripture. If your old line is, "I'm terrible with money," your new confession could be, "I receive wisdom for finances. I'm growing in stewardship. I make spirit-led decisions with money." If your old line is, "There are no good opportunities for me," your new one could be, "God opens doors no man can shut. I'm in the right place at the right time. Good works prepared for me are finding me." Speak these like they already exist, because that's how God speaks, from the end result. Step 4. Tie your words to action. Speaking the unseen isn't about sitting on the couch and waiting for checks to fall from the sky. When you call yourself wise with money, save something, even a small amount. When you call yourself generous, give something. When you call in opportunities, send the application, finish the project, make the call. Think of your actions as physical measurements that agree with your spoken choice of reality. The alignment between confession and action is where things start to move. Step 5. Persist long enough for the unseen to catch up. We live in a world of instant everything, but spiritual processes are more like sowing and reaping than pressing a button. Abraham didn't see father of many nations overnight. Your first week of new declarations might feel awkward. Your bank account might actually look worse for a bit. That's where most people go back to the old script. Stay with it. Romans.4:17 is not a one-night hack. It's a lifelong pattern of how God talks and how his friends learn to talk. Now hear this clearly. Speaking the unseen into prosperity is not about manipulating God into funding your wish list. It's about aligning with his nature as provider, his character as generous, and his kingdom's purpose for wealth, resourcing assignments, lifting burdens, blessing others. When you let him adjust your heart to that, something beautiful happens. You start calling in not just more money, but better motives. You want wealth because it frees you to obey faster, give more, and reflect Him more, not just to flex. So yes, Romans 4:17 is deep theology, but if it stays only in your notebook, you've missed it. It's a quantum prosperity blueprint disguised as a doctrinal sentence. It's showing you the pattern. God sees a dead thing, speaks to it from life, and reality eventually adjusts. You see your finances, your calling, your future, and you're invited to talk the same way. If this has been speaking to you, take a second and drop a simple sentence in the comments. I will speak from God's reality, not my fear. That one move shifts you from being a passive reactor to being an active partner. And if you want more content connecting faith and quantum physics, law of attraction questions with real Bible answers, and step-by-step biblical wealth hacks, make sure you like this video and subscribe so you don't miss what's next.